my mother thought it was untenable for me to live there. And she said to my father, it's either she goes or I go. And my father said, well, son, I can live without you. And I said, okay, you will. And I was out the next day. I got to this point when 32 years later, when I recognized, okay, it makes sense to reconnect, and I'm strong enough and understanding enough within myself. And I got her number through my sister, thanks to Facebook, and called her up. And I thought I was being really grown up. But my first questions to her were the questions of a 16-year-old boy. Like, what did I do wrong? How bad could I have been? What did I do to ignite this in you? And she made a list. And actually the first statement was, well, you bucked the system. And I got zoomed back to 16. Like, what does that mean? I didn't know what that meant when I was 16. Buck as in bucking a horse. I didn't know what that meant then, and I still don't understand what that means now, Mother. Because I was kind of family-less, I'd been dating a woman for a year or so on and off at high school, and when I left school. And her mother, her name is Joy, and her mother got to a point and said, Warren, you're just not doing enough for yourself. Yes, you have a job, but really you're just pissing your money up against the wall, like literally Friday night, drink, get drunk. And I want better for my daughter. And I thought, oh, okay. So I joined the army. And it's not the girlfriend. She's not the reason. It's Joy, the mother. She's the reason, because she instilled a sense of, there's more potential in you. And if you look at army kids, many of them come from broken homes, or they come from a lineage, or they come from poverty. Empires need poor people so they can, have armies. So there was a gentleman who, as an army major, and I was a soldier, he was in a different unit, but in the same compound. I really looked up to him, and he was a runner, and I was a runner. He was Special Air Service Regiment, and that's where I wanted to go. And I really looked up to him. And then after I graduated from Royal Military College, I went into his unit. He became my commanding officer. And I thought, wow. And he's one of the reasons that I didn't really feel comfortable there. So after some time, my parents decided they want to try and reconnect with me. And they decided to do that through my commanding officer. My commanding officer said to me, Lieutenant Buttery, you should connect with your parents. I order you to contact your family. I said, with all due respect, sir, you can fuck off. Now, he didn't really appreciate that comment. It was an illegal order, so he couldn't charge me. Then he committed quite some time on getting back at me, including I was the mess officer, so we created games around a function, and he challenged me to the obstacle course that I created, and we were dress uniform, and he challenged me. He said, okay. So we run up this cargo net on these steps of this beautiful old Queenslander house, and he went to grab my feet because I was ahead of him to pull me back to cheat. But the army shoes that I was wearing had steel taps on the toes and on the heels, and he cut his hand, sliced it right open. He went to hospital. I carried on the evening. We decided as young subalterns we'd go out and get drunk. And he came back with stitches in his hand and said, "Where's Buttery?" He wanted to challenge me again. I was already out in the town. I think I got 21 extras that time. Yeah, it means I had to serve at the front gate, no life, for 21 days. He later became my careers officer. And that's when my career really started to go down. So yeah, that was instrumental in me understanding the man that I wanted to be and not want to be. Looking at role models and recognize that these are not the kind of role models that I wanted to be. It brought me to the end of my army career, saying I don't want to be part of this any longer. I went to Sierra Leone for MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. And I got there, and it wasn't long. We were some of the first people to go back after the invasion of Freetown, which are horrific. If you know Sierra Leone War, it's about diamonds, and the hallmarks of that conflict were the use of machetes. Started with cutting off thumbs so they couldn't vote, arms, lips, ears, carving Revolutionary United Front in the people's chests, and horrific stuff. And MSF had set up a camp. It was the MSF amputee and war wounded camp. And everyone went in there. Kofi Annan and his wife, she went there, and what's her name? The former Mary Robinson, the former Irish president and later UN person, they'd come visit because we were basically capturing these people to come in off the jungle with these horrific wounds, gangrene and stuff that had been in the bush for a long, long time. MSF volunteer doctors would patch them up, maybe a bit of amputation here or there because they had to cut out the dead flesh. I was supporting the hospital and the camp. And you can imagine there are some stories around that camp, and so also a great one which I'll come to. There was this man. He was an older man. He probably would have been somewhere 50-ish. And I was sitting in the medical clinic in the little camp, and I just sat down next to him, and he started to tell me a story. He had no arms. They'd cut his lips off. And he started to tell me the story about how he was really lucky. The RUF had taken him out into the bush, and he'd witnessed his wife be raped and then murdered. And they'd already cut his arms. I think that's the timeline. And then at that moment, the ECOWAS soldiers, the Nigerian soldiers, came rushing through and cleared the camp, and he went running into the bush with his stump. He had his niece, a little 3-year-old, stump was pushed against his own hip to stop it bleeding, and his other little boy holding what was left of his arm. They'd cut it but not cut it through at this stage, and ran off into the jungle. So it took a little while for him to get out of the jungle, and he eventually did, and they operated with him, German surgeons, incredible people, them, using ketamine to knock them out as an anesthetic. And I started bawling. I just wept like a child, and literally ran out of the clinic and ran home, and took me maybe 4 or 5 days before I could muster the courage to go back into the camp.
Sure.
And I went back into the camp, and of course, I found him. And I sat down with him. I said, thank you so much for your story. But why did you tell me this? He said, I felt you needed to cry. He felt my trauma. I wanted to share his experience to be able to allow me to let it go. That was a huge catharsis for me. And I continued working on the camp, and I really appreciated him. Yeah, so that was a big event. Mm-hmm. Yeah, me trying to tell that at Burning Man one year to a young, scantily dressed woman while we were on LSD was a really bad mistake. But